Hebrews chapter 12, beginning there in verse 1. Hebrews, the 12th chapter, beginning there in verse 1. Immediately following that great chapter of faith that we find in chapter 11, maybe you've heard it called the Faith Hall of Fame, we find chapter 12. And so if you would, begin there with me in Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 1. Notice what the Hebrew writer writes. Therefore, he says, we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, what do we need to do? Well, it says we need to do two things. We need to lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. When you think about the Christian race, the Hebrew writer says, since we're surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, here's what you need to do. Lay aside every weight. Lay aside the sin that so easily, notice that, easily ensnares us, and run with endurance the race that is set before you. Well, how do I run that race that is set before me? Notice verse 2. You run that race how? Looking unto Jesus. If you've ever ran a race before, you're looking towards the finish line, right? You're ready to be done. Here the Hebrew writer says, when we run the Christian race, we are looking to Jesus. Why do we look to Jesus? Well, notice, He is the author, He's the leader, He's the giver, and He's the finisher. He's the perfecter of our faith. And notice, we're talking about joy tonight. Notice this about Jesus, who for the joy that was set before Him, He did what? He did three things. He endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Because joy was set before Jesus, the Hebrew writer says He was able to endure the cross. You think about the pain and suffering that Jesus went through in the final hours of His life, bearing His own weight on His hands and on His feet, but also bearing the weight of the sin of the world. Because of the joy that was set before Jesus, He despised the shame. Think about the shame that Jesus went through. Going through a trial that was unfair, being beaten, being mocked, being spit on, being publicly executed by being hung on a wooden tree. Because of the joy that was set before Jesus, He sat down at the right hand of God, where He is now interceding for us, 1 John chapter 2, verse 1, where He is now our advocate before the Father, pleading our case. But you notice, Jesus did those three things. He endured the cross, He despised the shame, He sat down at the right hand of God. Why? Because there was joy that was set before Him. Do you know what that joy was? When Jesus endured the cross and He despised the shame and sat down at the right hand of God, He was looking to the joy that was set before Him. Do you know what that joy was? That joy was you. That joy was your soul. That joy was your salvation. That as Jesus endured the cross, despised the shame, and sat down at the right hand of God, He had one thing in mind. You and me. He said, I will endure the cross. I'll endure all of this pain. I'll endure all of this agony. I'll shed my blood. So that one day you and I can come into a relationship. So that one day you can come to know me. Look at what Jesus did for you. He paid a great price. What are you going to do for Him? Are you a child of God this evening? If you're not a child of God, then I hope you'll consider making that very, very important decision by coming to God in obedience, doing what He has commanded, hearing the Word, believing the Word, repenting of your sins, confessing Christ, and being immersed in water for the forgiveness of your sins to be added to the Lord's church. If you've never made that decision, I hope that you'll consider it this evening. There's no better time than the present. Maybe you are a child of God, but maybe you've strayed away from God. Maybe you've allowed sin to separate you from God. Maybe your joy isn't where it should be. Maybe you're struggling with something. Why not come forward in just a few moments and have us go to God on your behalf as your brothers and sisters in Christ? James chapter 5 verse 16. When we confess our sins to one another and we pray for each other, what is the result? Healing. And so if you're in need of healing this evening, please don't hesitate. Take hold of this opportunity. It's my exhortation to you this evening. Do not leave this building tonight in the wrong relationship with God. Do what you have to do as we stand and as we sing.